For the past year, Miles Morales has been Brooklyn's one and only Spider-Man, and he's struggling to juggle his superhero life with his normal one. When one of his old friends, Gwen Stacy, returns after he assumed he would never see her again, she takes him on a journey throughout dimensions. This adventure is far from what Miles expected, as he meets a society full of spider people throughout the multiverse. Meeting all of his fellow spider peers forces Miles to question not only his place on his Earth, but through the entire multiverse. This is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the latest film from Sony Marvel and Sony Pictures Animation, and is the sequel to 2018's Oscar-winning phenomenon, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And come to think of it, the name Into the Spider-Verse didn't really fit the first one now, did it? But that's irrelevant because Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is regarded as one of the best comic book movies of all time, and for good reason. It tells a great story featuring so many different variants of one of the most iconic superheroes ever, Spider-Man. All the while having some of the coolest and most unique animation you've probably ever seen in an animated film. At the time, at least. Now it seems like other movie studios are trying to recreate that same animation. And hey, that's not a bad thing. Following up Into the Spider-Verse was always gonna be a tall order. But Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is an absolute blast that manages to take the characters we love from the previous film and the animation and elevate it to new heights. I am not kidding when I say my only criticism with this film, big criticism at least, is that it ended. Now, I pity anyone who is forced with the task of making a live-action Miles Morales movie, because this adaptation of Miles is going to be their bar, and it's going to be a hard bar to hit. Shameik Moore delivers a phenomenal performance as Miles Morales. He captures all the fun and lightheartedness of being Spider-Man, all the while the character of Miles being a really compelling one. The thing that makes Miles Morales such a great character is that he's so different from Peter Parker. People seem to forget that Miles Morales is not Peter Parker, and he has a different relationship with people who Peter Parker typically doesn't have relationships with. And it makes for a great character because you don't feel the need to compare it to other things. Yes, I know, Miles may have also lost his uncle just like Peter, but his uncle was a supervillain. Peter's was not. Again, there's a different dynamic there. But everything about Miles as a character is almost perfect. Again, I really think it's going to be hard to top this adaptation of the character. This film isn't strictly Miles's, however, because Gwen Stacy also gets a lot of screen time. Hailee Steinfeld returns to play Spider-Woman. And yes, Spider-Gwen is not actually her name in anything. I don't know why I thought that. It makes total sense not to be. Clark Kent would tell her that's a bad alter ego. And to be honest, Ghost Spider is just a way cooler name. Going back to what I said about dynamics and how each Spider person has a different conflict with different loved ones in their life, makes each Spider person so unique, and Gwen Stacy is another example of that. The first 10 to 15 minutes are all hers, and it makes for a great opening scene. And I want to throw this out there. I adore everything these films do with Jake Johnson's Peter B. Parker. They avoid retreading old ground seen in any of the live-action Spider-Man movies by making their version of Peter Parker a dad who's actually very happy with his life. I know some people aren't gonna like that because Spider-Man always has to be miserable, but I really enjoyed that. Now, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a technical marvel, pun intended. It may be a cliche thing to say, but there's no better way to put it. It's a comic book brought to life. And this film only ups the game. As the title insinuates, go across the Spider-Verse and see different dimensions. Different dimensions that all have their own unique animation style. And even if the animation style is not that different between dimensions, there are still enough small details throughout the dimensions that are so cool. It makes every dimension feel like there's life put into it, and every dimension is beautiful. But my favorite part about each dimension having its own animation style is that each respective spider person that comes from that dimension, or anyone from that dimension, may I add you, stays in that style. And this is no more apparent than in one of the film's many memorable side characters, Daniel Kaluuya's Spider-Punk. Now, to be fair, his animation is definitely a love it or hate it kind of thing. I loved seeing his more jagged and rather inconsistent animation, which admittedly fits the character very well. But I couldn't help imagine seeing his universe and go, damn bro, you live like this? Again, I thought his animation was really cool, but I definitely think it might be the most polarizing of the film. And also, they may or may not have written themselves into a corner with certain characters from certain other universes. But my absolute favorite thing the animation does is bring one of my favorite C-list Spider-Man villains to life. And that's the Spot, played by Jason Schwartzman. I never expected them to do this character in live action. Not in a million years. We'd get 10 Green Goblins before we ever got the Spot, probably. So I am more than happy to see that they did this character and they did him so well. His design, his animation, his backstory, it's all perfect. I loved this villain. Now, if we go back to the beginning of the video, I said my only criticism was that it ended, and that is true. This film is phenomenal. The characters, the animation, the story, the humor, it just didn't miss. But it is, however, only half of a movie. If you follow movie news as closely as I do, you would have known going into this movie that it is a part one of a two-part story. And I'm not going to criticize the movie for being a two-parter. That's not my problem at all. In fact, I kind of like two-parter movies for some reason. But there's nothing in this movie that makes me feel as if it's a complete movie. There's not a complete story told within this film. Allow me to explain. Avengers Infinity War, you have Thanos' journey to get the Infinity Stones, and it ends with him getting all the Infinity Stones and, doing his thing. Or if we look at Back to the Future 2, Biff gets a sports almanac from the future, knows the outcome of every sporting event, becomes a mega millionaire, and Marty McFly has to go back in time and save the day. Those films have complete narratives before their big cliffhanger. And yeah, it's not uncommon for films to not feel complete. Empire Strikes Back, great example. And in fact, that's probably what this is going to be compared to more. I just think Infinity War and Back to the Future 2 are the perfect example of great film, big cliffhanger. And I understand there are plenty of films that have a big cliffhanger that don't feel resolved. And hey, it's not a bad thing to not have resolve in a movie. I just wanted to make mention of this because some people are going to watch this and maybe feel a little bit disappointed that it's only half a movie. It's still a great half of a movie, and I cannot wait to see the second half, but just know it's half of a movie. Everything I'm saying right here is going to become irrelevant a year from now. And yes, I said a year from now, because Sony had the bright idea to have both films be worked on at the same time. Because what studio would be dumb enough to make a big multi-million-dollar blockbuster and have it be only a half a movie without having the next movie already in development? I tell you, Warner Brothers got real lucky on that one. Oh, and by the way, I feel like I have to mention this. I don't think the soundtrack is as good as the first film, but it also doesn't have Post Malone on it, so it is already better. But aside from my borderline irrelevant complaint, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse kicks a lot of ass. If you're a fan of Spider-Man or animation, it's a film well worth your time to see. I hope you all enjoyed this review, and if you did, please consider hitting that like button, and if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to be notified when my next review drops. Oh, and by the way, check out the website. Until next time, I'm Quentin Dunaway, hoping you will keep it cinematic.